A man said he'd built a car that ran on nothing but water. Then he died claiming someone had poisoned him for it. Stanley Meyer collapsed outside a restaurant in Grove City, Ohio in 1998, right after telling his brother, "They poisoned me." Investors had given him millions. Governments had taken meetings with him. 2 years earlier, a court had ruled his invention was something else entirely. And in a minute, I'll tell you exactly what that ruling said. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Right now, today, there are cars on real roads that genuinely run on water. Not the way Meyer promised, the exact opposite way. Stick around because once you see how, this entire story flips. In the early 1980s, Stanley Meyer was a small town inventor with no engineering degree, working out of a garage in Ohio. He announced he had built a water fuel cell, a device that used almost no electricity to break water apart into hydrogen and oxygen, then burn that hydrogen for fuel. The number he claimed was the problem. He said his buggy could drive across the country on 22 gallons of water. That's roughly 1 gallon getting you over 100 miles. For free, using nothing but tap water and a car battery. People wanted to believe it so badly that it stopped mattering whether it was true. Meyer started a company, sold water fuel cell technology licenses to investors around the world, and gave demonstrations where the buggy appeared to run on water alone. Meyer called his device a water fuel cell, and he was careful never to reveal exactly how it worked. He talked about resonant frequencies, splitting water molecules apart using a fraction of the electricity normal electrolysis needed. It sounded scientific. It used real words from real physics. That was part of why it was so convincing. Vague enough to dodge scrutiny, technical enough to sound credible. In 1996, two of his investors sued him for fraud. During the trial, expert witnesses tested his device. Here's what they found. It didn't produce anywhere near enough hydrogen to power an engine. The buggy, they concluded, was almost certainly running on a hidden secondary source, not water. The court ordered Meyer to repay his investors $25,000 for what the judge called gross and egregious fraud. 2 years later, he was dead. And because he died suddenly at 57, right after telling someone he'd been poisoned, the story didn't end with the fraud verdict. It became a legend. Proof to millions of people online that big oil kills anyone who threatens it. Here's why Meyer's invention couldn't have worked, and it has nothing to do with conspiracies. Water, H2O, is already a burned fuel. It's the ash left over after hydrogen has already released its energy. Splitting water back into hydrogen and oxygen doesn't create energy. It costs energy. That's basic thermodynamics, and it's not a theory anyone seriously disputes. It's been measured to extreme precision for over a century. So if you spend energy splitting water into hydrogen, then burn that hydrogen to get energy back, you never come out ahead. You always lose some in the process. There is no shortcut, no secret catalyst, no trick a lone inventor in an Ohio garage could stumble onto that violates a law confirmed by every engine, every power plant, and every star in the sky. A car that drives on water alone with no outside energy source isn't an invention. It's a perpetual motion machine, and every perpetual motion machine in history has turned out to be either a mistake or a scam. That's what killed Stanley Meyer's version of the water car. But it's also exactly why the real version works, because the real version never broke that law in the first place. Toyota builds a car called the Mirai. Hyundai builds one called the Nexo. Both are on real roads today in California, Japan, and South Korea. Both genuinely produce water as their only tailpipe emission. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. The water isn't what goes into the tank. It's what comes out of the exhaust pipe. These cars run on hydrogen, stored as compressed gas at 700 times atmospheric pressure in a tank behind the rear seats. Inside a device called a fuel cell, that hydrogen combines with oxygen pulled straight from the air. That reaction releases electricity, which powers the motor. No combustion, no explosion, just a controlled chemical reaction, similar to a battery that never needs charging as long as you keep feeding it hydrogen. And the only byproduct of hydrogen plus oxygen is water. Drive a Mirai for an hour, and you can watch water literally drip out of the exhaust onto the road. Some owners have joked about topping off their windshield wiper fluid straight from their own tailpipe. It's clean enough to do it. Stanley Meyer promised a car that drinks water and creates energy for free. What actually exists is a car that drinks hydrogen and creates water for free as harmless exhaust. It's the same chemistry running in the opposite direction. And that's precisely why it doesn't break any laws of physics. The hydrogen was already energized somewhere else long before it reached the fuel tank, which raises the obvious question: where does that hydrogen actually come from? Here's the twist. To get hydrogen for these cars, one of the most common methods is running electricity through water and splitting it apart into hydrogen and oxygen. The exact reaction Stanley Meyer claimed to have done in his garage. The difference is that industrial electrolysis plants don't pretend the energy is free. They use enormous amounts of electricity from solar farms, wind turbines, or the power grid, feed it into machines called electrolyzers, and produce hydrogen that gets compressed, shipped, and pumped into cars at hydrogen refueling stations. California alone has more than 50 of these stations open to the public right now, and Japan has built over 100, mostly clustered around Tokyo. So the water car conspiracy wasn't entirely fantasy. Water genuinely can be split into fuel. Engineers do it every day at industrial scale, in real facilities around the world. Meyer's mistake wasn't the chemistry. It was claiming you could get that energy back out for less than you put in, off a car battery, in a garage. And the scam version of his idea never actually died. Even today, companies sell HHO kits that claim to boost your gasoline engine's mileage using a tiny onboard water splitter bolted under the hood. Independent lab tests, including ones run by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, have repeatedly found these devices do nothing. The physics hasn't changed. It's the same impossible promise in a $200 box instead of a dune buggy. The conspiracy survives because it's emotionally satisfying in a way the truth isn't. A genius solved free energy and got murdered for it is a better story than an inventor made a mistake and a fraud and then died of an unrelated aneurysm at 57. One version has a villain. The other just has thermodynamics. People almost always pick the version with a villain. Stanley Meyer told the world he'd built a car that ran on water for free with no catch. He was wrong, and a court said so in writing. But somewhere in that lie was a real idea, pointed in the wrong direction. Water can become fuel. It just costs energy to make it, and it gives water back when you use it, not the other way around. Today, there are cars quietly driving through Tokyo and Los Angeles with water dripping out of their tailpipes, running on hydrogen pulled from the same reaction Stanley Meyer claimed to have mastered in 1980. He just had the arrow pointing the wrong way. If this changed how you think about that old conspiracy, hit like it genuinely helps this reach more people. And subscribe, because next time we're looking at the industrial race to make hydrogen production itself finally cheaper than oil.